Welcome back. Our next speaker is Adrian Lim. Adrian works as the head of Department for Integrated Healthcare, overseeing 5 different units, namely audiology, speech pathology, optometry, dietary, and also psychology in the SOXO Rehabilitation Center. In clinical practice, he graduated with the background of psychology, specializing in cognitive behavioral therapy, psychological assessment, mindfulness, and also clinical hypnosis. He has 10 years of experience attending to clients with various medical diagnoses, such as depression, anxiety, post-stroke and traumatic brain injury rehabilitation, using his psychological approach. He is interested in areas of psychopathology, personality, and also clinical hypnosis in a physical rehabilitation setting. His talk is titled, A Case Study, CBT and Major Depressive Disorder.
Good evening, everyone. Good day. Allow me to share my screen. Can you see my screen? Yes?
Yes, we can. Yes, you can.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. It's really wonderful, and I'm really honored to be here in this session, okay? And to be given this opportunity to share a little bit about the practice, the clinical practice that I have been doing with my clients, and just a little bit about myself. I'm Adrian Lim, and I'm the head of Integrated Healthcare Department in SOXO Rehabilitation Center in Malaysia, Malacca. And on a daily basis, I do see clients that actually has depression, anxiety, and those with musculoskeletal problem, dealing with pain, and also clients that who is looking forward to return to work after going through physical therapy. So today I would like to share a case study. Is not so much of the technicalities, but more of the experience that I walk together with the client using cognitive behavioral therapy, and also in addition to the techniques of hypnotherapy. So I call this case study, I See the Light, just to quote the sentence, the phrase by the client at the end of the therapy, I see the light. So let me bring you the journey, right? Going through the journey. So I call this client Mr. Light, since he gave me the phrase at the end, I see the light. So I would call him Mr. Light, and he is 26 years old, okay, single, and he was diagnosed with major depressive disorder by his psychiatrist. A little bit of history, a bit of background. He had 2 suicidal attempts. Okay, one, it is through by cutting his wrist, and the second time actually he attempted to jump from the 2nd floor, and of course the people there saved him, brought him to the hospital, and of course he went through major depressive disorder, diagnosed with major depressive disorder, and he underwent psychotherapy, and he was on medication. So a little bit of his background as well. He's a master's degree student, and also he works part-time. So in the first session that I met him, is actually, he called it a gloomy day. Yeah, he called it a gloomy day. It is gloomy. And he was expressing his emotion, his feelings at a time. He said, and I quote, "Do you know how much effort do I need to take in order to attend your session is a lot of effort, mental effort and physical effort is so heavy. A lot of things running through his mind. And he said, well, he made it. So there is a sense of not giving up in him, although he said it's a gloomy day. Yeah. But I can see, by him describing, he said, well, I'm here now. I'm here. So that is a form of the sense of motivation of not giving up in him. And bearing in mind, he had 2 suicidal attempt history back then. So in the session, he disclosed, he said, well, he had a very poor family support, he has conflict, and of course, he underwent abusive childhood, and life has not been treating him well since primary school, in high school, all the way to his university, and until now. So he called it a depressive life, just to quote him. He said, he has been living in a very depressive environment. There's no love for him. So as I mentioned, he was seeing a psychiatrist, so he was prescribed antidepressants, anti-anxiolytics, and of course, the psychiatrist encouraged him to do some reading. So he read about CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and he decided to attend therapy, not to try it out, but to get well. So he asked me, he said, where is the sun? Where is the sun? Of course, he was not in psychotic state, definitely, by asking where is the sun. He just said, it is a rather gloomy day. And he described his mood as, he's feeling down, he's feeling low, having low mood. And he said he couldn't concentrate for long. He has been having a short attention span, a lot of unhealthy emotions, negative thoughts. And he said, there is no hope. So you find that earlier on, he said, well, here I am here now, right? And he followed by, where is the sun? And he clarified, he said, I'm here to look for the sun. I'm here to look for the light. He said, I have been suffering for long and I'm here to look for solution. Not solution to his problem, but he wants to know how he could change. So he's looking for change. Yeah. So in the session, of course, he denied any suicidal ideation and any auditory, visual hallucination. He denied any delusional thoughts, right? And in the session, what I did, I built rapport, I built trust with the client. Because for a therapy to work effectively, we must first build a very good therapeutic relationship, trust, because the client is here to disclose and talk about something that he wouldn't want to share with just anyone on the street, not to mention about his family. So building rapport, building trust is something that is very essential. So as a therapist, sometimes when a client shows that he is so eager for change, so eager to change his life, so eager, so positive, at times during that moment, we may be a bit carried away with that mood of, highly motivated and, let's go deeply into it. So, but bearing in mind that we still need to go back to the basics, which is building rapport and trust. and having that good therapeutic alliance, that good therapeutic relationship. Yeah. So that is essential. So for the client to see the sun as what he said, okay, we need to ensure that we maintain our composure, and we must know that we want to continue to build good relationship, yeah, therapeutically, right? So it is challenging, okay? It is challenging as the therapy process goes on. The client definitely, he has resistance. Yeah. And at times he was in an ambivalent state. So I call this, he was in the state where, you know, in therapy, and therapy is like, you know, a ship to cross the sea of negativity, which means that there are actually a lot of things that is going on in his mind. And therapy is there to help him to sail through, as what I quote from the client's realization later on. Therapy is actually a ship that helped him to sail through the sea of negativity. So what happens when the client, when Mr. Light was having very high resistance in the session, and at times he was thinking, should I continue? Should I not continue the therapy? In fact, is this real? You know, is actually, you know, CBT, you know, working? Is it my fault? My family members? I think they are in the wrong. So there are a lot of things that is going on in his mind. And during those times, what I did, I put aside temporarily all the CBT techniques, psychotherapy. I put it aside. And the focus is on empathy, practicing empathetic listening during that time, being genuine, compassion. Some of I believe the speakers earlier talk about compassion, and it is very true. It is true. Compassion, empathy, a lot of patience, and the reflection of feelings to the client. These are essential ingredients for therapy. And it may not just be one session. It can be in every session and a few sessions without even having CBT techniques, just purely reflecting the feelings, being there, the presence of the therapist there with the client, and to be able to dwell and understand the world of the client without being absorbed. Without being absorbed. That means we do need to maintain certain composure while doing our best to understand the client. So being genuine and congruent as a therapist during those times where the client was in a very negative state and resistant to whatever was being discussed and unsure whether to continue, what the client actually want from the therapist is actually genuineness, empathy, and compassion. And the client, in fact, mentioned that it was these essential elements It's not about me. I would like to say it here to everyone. It's not about me, right? It's about the practice of empathy. It's about the compassion, the reflection of feelings that is consistent and congruent, that the client in fact said. Those moments was especially very healing. Heal. The client could heal at that time, where the client said he was not being judged. So as a therapist at a time, definitely, I know that I'm practicing CBT. I need to use CBT. I am using CBT. I'm using a bit of hypnosis, yes, but looking at the client as a human as a whole, that we need to be there with the client. Now, I find that these few elements, no matter what techniques we use, whether we're using CBT or we are using hypnosis, these are essential elements that, in fact, the client actually heal without us knowing. The client may not tell us, but in fact, the client is going through the process of healing. And in this case, the client revealed that these are the essential things that was very, therapeutically healing for him. Okay, so after that, we move into emotional responsibility, where the client actually start to deepen his understanding that in fact, we are affected not by the event, but rather by our own interpretation of the event. So we spend quite a lot of time, quite a long time, in fact, 1 or 2 sessions just to dwell into this, talking about emotional responsibility. And in fact, because the client was also a little bit philosophical, so this phrase caught his attention. Okay, so he was quite a philosophical client. Yeah, so we had a chat on this. We do discuss this quite deeply. Okay, so as we all know, so in the process of CBT, right? So the process of sharing about A, what is A, B, C, D, E, right? And we discuss about the belief, we discuss about the consequences, right? The activating events, and many more. The whole process, okay, which I will not go deeply here, okay, because my intention here is I would like to share the process and the experience of CBT for a client, okay, who has, was diagnosed with MDD. So, as I said, the client has resistance, and when I look at some of my notes, okay, I think these 2 sentences were actually quoted quite frequently by the client, stated by the client quite frequently. He said, I think you're wrong. How can this be true? So, and I think one of the things that he mentioned was, if I were to change my thinking, I were to acknowledge and change my emotions, I am no longer my original self. So the blame is on others. The fault is of others, right? So I'm not the one that is supposed to change, right? So of course, since he is being quite philosophical, we do go back to this phrase, we are affected not by the event, but rather by our own interpretation of the event. So we dwell on that using, of course, continuously CBT techniques. And I respected his space when he was very resistant, right? Under such circumstances. So I did not dispute him at that time, okay? But I respected his space to be able to agree to disagree, something that was lacking in his childhood. So, of course, understanding his childhood, he was raised in a very authoritarian and kind of abusive family. So there was no space for him to speak out, to talk freely, because by doing so, if he were to do so, he will be punished severely. So in the therapy, it was his experience whereby for the very first time, he felt that his opinion was respected. He felt that he has the space, he has the freedom to speak. And he know that he will not be penalized, or, that there will be no, punitive measures on him. So again, with CBT techniques, of course, but adding the ingredients of empathy, compassion, reflection of feelings, patience, and many others, in therapy, it does make the client heal once again from stage to stage. And to be very honest, it is really wonderful. And it's beyond words. It's really wonderful to see the client heal as the sessions goes by. Yeah. So there was one time something happened and he came to the session. He was agitated. He was angry, a mixed feeling. He was feeling sad, angry, and he was trying to calm himself down in the session. And it was a walk-in session. It was not an appointment. It was a walk-in session. And at the time, I don't have other clients and I'm able to see him. So he sat down, he was breathing to calm himself down for the next 10, 15 minutes. So I allowed him to do that. And suddenly he just said, "Help me to calm down." Just one sentence, help me to calm down. So I look at him and I said, all right, definitely, I'm always here with you in session. As long as you're here with me, I'll be here to walk this through together with you. So I introduced to him Synopsis, which the client, he actually read it before about Synopsis. And I asked him whether he is willing to do it, because he said he just want to relax. He want to just calm down. He want to relax. And I explained to him about what is it all about, some of the stages, talking about trance. And of course, I reassured the client that Synopsis is safe. And here's the thing about reassuring the client that Synopsis is safe. Without a good, strong therapeutic relationship for a client who is going through depression and, at that time, during that time in session, so agitated, trying to calm down, without that, without the safe space, without trust, the assurance to the client may not be adequate. So again, I would like to emphasize again, honestly, it is not about me. Yeah, it's the second time I'm emphasizing this, right? It's not about me. I'm sharing about the importance of having trust and good therapeutic relationship with the client. And that reassurance, the client said one sentence to me at a time. He said, all right, I'll trust you with this. Okay, he read about it, okay? And he said, it's a 50-50 thing that he read and he's not sure, but he said, all right, Adrian, I trust you on this, that it is safe. No harm of Synopsis. I said, right. So my intention is to help the client to relax and to feel safe. So I led him into hypnosis, the stage. And of course, I led him to his favorite place, help him to calm down, to relax. And of course, the client slept for 20 minutes. Yeah, he really dozed off. Yeah. And of course, then I, woke him up, right? The awakening stage, right? So in the awakening stage, yeah. So, he woke up and the first thing he said, wow, this is the best sleep or rest that I had for the past, few months, compared to the past few months. It is really, really fantastic. And he said, he is not only feeling calm, which that's what he asked for. He said he is feeling light, very light. And he said it is such a wonderful experience that he has never had for a long, long time, as far as he could remember. Yeah. And of course, the following session, okay, we proceeded with CBT. And of course, I included from time to time the elements of hypnosis, okay, in the session. So the following session, the client disclosed, he said he saw a child in that place. Okay, this is just the client revealing without me asking. Yeah, he just said it was a child. And I asked him after that, since he revealed it, I said, who's that child? And he said, it's him. I said, okay. And what was that place? He said it was a very, very huge football field. Football field. And of course, he loved, to play football. So, as a child. And I asked him, any thoughts about that? Just a simple question. Any thoughts about that? Yeah. And he said, the football field, it is so huge, he could run anywhere in the field. And he said, that is called freedom. That is called freedom. And he said, the field is so huge. During the football match, of course, there are rules and regulations, okay, which, of course, he said it resembles his childhood, a lot of rules and regulation, okay, and, it was abusive for him as a child, not the football, but, what has happened in his life as a child. But he said, in their favorite place, because it was so huge, so huge, he said, it actually awakens him to the fact that the football match has rules and regulation, yes, but the football field is still huge and it signifies freedom. Freedom. That means when we walk to the football field, not necessarily we are tied to the rules and regulation because the football match no longer exists, which means that what he went through as a child, that is the past. It's no longer happening now. So what he was experiencing now is just the carryover effect, as I quote him, the carryover effect of what he has brought with him from the past. So it was a very long session, the follow-up session. It was about 1.5 to 2 hours. It's very long. We really discussed and he mentioned that the reflection of his resistance, he was aware of his resistance for the past few sessions that I mentioned about earlier. And he said the resistance that he had was because he couldn't let go of the past. That's what he mentioned. He couldn't let go of the past. And in that session, just that one session, he had this awakening in him. Yeah. So of course, with that, we of course proceed to using CBT. We still use CBT in addition to some synopsis element techniques, and we go through the entire CBT session. We had a total of 15, 15 CBT sessions, in addition to some hypnotherapy. And of course, we discuss, we explore, we have the, disputing processes. We explore alternative thinking about having healthy emotions. And I would like to share here 6 important pointers that the client is awakened using the client's verbalized sentences. Okay,
Adrian,
it was not written by him, but of course, it actually was verbalized, and of course I jotted down in the session with his permission. And
if I can just politely interrupt you for a moment, we've got 5 more minutes for you to conclude your presentation.
All right, thank you.
Okay,
thank you.
Thanks, Adrian. Thank you.
Right, thank you. So I would like to, just continue with the 6 points, all right? And the first, the client has this awakening that it is perfectly fine to be angry, to have anger at times, but there is no need to be reactive. So when things happen, according to the client, definitely emotionally, we will be, affected. Yeah. But there is no need to be reactive. And it is okay to be affected at times, but there is no need to hate. Yeah. So this is, of course, referring to his family issue. Okay. And third, he said, I embrace differences among my family members. So there is a closure there in him by understanding that, he is actually responsible for his emotion. He's responsible for the way he responds. And at the same time, acknowledging that he couldn't change the past. And what matters most is now. Yeah. So the 5th point is, my emotions, I choose how to respond. Anger versus assertive. So by putting forward a point, there is no point arguing, using anger to argue, but putting forward his perspective over certain matter by being assertive, okay, but not being reactive. Now, this is something that is wonderful because previously he was not like that, according to him, okay? Now, lastly, he said, what I think, what I feel may not always be true. Check it first. Now, this is actually his technique. Whenever something happened, there's an activating event. Whenever he's, he is thinking a lot or feeling, uneasy, he would always say, what he thinks and what he feels may not always be true. Let's check it out first. Yeah. So this is actually the process, the experience that I've actually been through with a client, and just to share with everyone in this session. Okay. So the outcome, very briefly. Okay. So of course, he has better communication with family members and his colleagues, okay, as he works part-time. And of course, he has the awareness of his own emotion and thoughts. And of course, he's able to apply the CBT techniques outside therapy session, okay, in his daily life. And of course, he do self-hypnosis as well, okay? And he does share the concept of emotional responsibility with family members and friends. Of course, not doing therapy with them, but just, sharing the concept. And he said, remember, earlier on, he said, where is the sun? And now his phrase is, he didn't say, I see or I saw the sun. No, he said, I see the light. And I asked him, in fact, I was curious and I'm interested to understand. He said, I see the light. And he said, Adrian, I can only see the sun morning and evening. At night, I cannot see the sun. But when I say I see the light, morning, evening, night, even the moonlight, I'm able to see it. It means that even during the darkest hour, even during the darkest time, I know as long as I'm able to understand and remember all these techniques that was discussed, I know I'm able to see the light in my life. So that's all from my sharing for this session today. So thank you. I will pass back to the MC. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Adrian. We've had an overwhelming number of messages which you may be seeing in the chat section. Some of the adjectives are inspirational, wonderful, insightful. So thank you very much for sharing that and the case study with us. Adrian, a few questions that we have. How do you, as a person, as an ordinary person, not as a therapist, how do you protect yourself from taking on board your clients' depressions?
Right. About my self-care, right?
Yes.
Yes. Yep. So I do very frequent self-hypnosis, okay? Self-hypnosis. And of course, I do practice mindfulness as well, yeah, from time to time. And I do have colleagues whom I confide with, okay, who is also a psychologist. And that is how I take care of my emotions, okay, take care of my my well-being. And of course, try to have good sleep from time to time. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I've got a question here from Risha in the audience. Thank you for the presentation. It does bring up the importance of therapeutic alliance. What tool was used for diagnosing and assessing the major depression?
What tools? Right. Usually for our center, we use Beck's depression inventory. We do use Hamilton depressive scale, okay, HAM-D. So these two, and also DASS 21 or DASS 42. So these are the screening tools that we actually use to evaluate, to assess the level of depression of the client, and also to actually see the effectiveness of the therapy. In fact, to understand. So on a weekly basis, or every 2 weeks, we will run the assessment using the assessment tool. And in fact, we do see the scale, the score, the depression score actually went down. That means it's getting better and better. So it is not just about the feedback from the client, okay, but we do have in addition to assessment screening tools. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And again, as a person, and not with your therapist's hat on, how do you feel when a client states that they wish to take their own life?
Right. Usually the first emotion I would have is, to be honest, I will feel very sad. While I cannot show that out. So I would feel sad, and there and there, I would actually ask myself that just be with the person. Be with the person. Be with the client. There is no need to think of anything else. There is no need to panic. And be composed. Do not let that sadness actually, being revealed or disclosed. it's fine to have empathy, but when a client is so down and coupled with the therapist or as a person, coupled with that sadness that I have, definitely it's not going to benefit the client. Yeah. And of course, after each session, I will need to have, a calm down session for myself. Yeah. To process that emotion that I have in me. And to be honest, self-hypnosis is really effective for that as well. Yeah. Hope that answered the question.
Yes, it did. Thank you. It's not a situation that anyone really wants to be presented with. A very tough one. Another question here for you, Adrian. Why do you think depression clients often describe their experiences using metaphors?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Why do you think clients with presenting with depression, why do you think they often describe their experiences using a metaphor? They refer to it metaphorically.
Right.
Heaviness.
So I believe it is easier for them to share it using metaphor, because if they were to describe without that, it is going to be extremely hurtful. This is just based on the client's feedback, not this client, but other client, right? Where they talk about metaphor and they in fact said they feel good by using metaphor because, number one, it will make the therapist understand better. Okay. And they know that it describes best of what they are feeling and what they went through. And thirdly, as I said, if they were to use direct sentences without metaphor, if they were to be descriptive, it is going to open up old wound. And that can be, very, very hurtful, and it can be very damaging for them. This is just something that I can share using my previous clients' feedback on this. Yeah, very good question, in fact. Very good question.
Thank you, Adrian. Had another question come in here. This one is from Jojo Tan, who says, "Hi, Adrian. For clients like Mr. Light, who has the tendency to ruminate, would journaling be an effective, helpful upkeep? Getting them to keep a journal of their experience."
Right. For Mr. Light, yes. In fact, yes, he does journaling. Yes, it was discussed as part of the homework assignments. Yeah, journaling is helpful in his case, and in fact, he did reveal that journaling has helped him a lot. Yeah, to actually pour it out rather than keeping it in. So there is always an output for him. Yes.
Okay. Just looking in the chat section, can't see any more questions. I've got one that I'd like to put to you. Do you find your compassion gets challenged when you're working so closely with people who are living with this intense emotion?
Compassion being challenged.
Yes, your own compassion being challenged when you're working so closely and intently with these people who are living with such emotions, such intense.
Right. So compassion being challenged, does it mean depleting? Does it deplete?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Right. So, well, I'm a human being as well. At times, I do feel that, right? It can be a challenge. Yeah. But what keeps me moving, or what keeps us moving? I believe it is a shared, struggle together. As a practitioner, as a therapist, we uphold unconditional love. For me, I practice the concept of unconditional love. So when we practice that on a daily basis, although, yes, sometimes we do face burnout, right? Compassion, big challenge, is true. But by having the right source of how to channel that energy and practicing at the same time, practicing unconditional love, definitely we will be able to continue to work together with the clients and we walk the journey together. I believe in that. That is my experience. Yes.
Absolutely. Hear, hear. That's beautifully put. Very, very beautifully put. Adrian, thank you. We've now come to, it's 12:40 here in the UK, 7:40 in Malaysia, as I understand. So we've come to the end of our time slot. Adrian, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
You and I have chatted several times over WhatsApp, so it's nice to have been able to have the opportunity to finally see you face to face. Thank you. You're welcome to stay with us should you wish to do so. And I'm now going to hand over back to Tom. Thanks again, Adrian. Bye-bye.